Yeah, what's that?
Oh, you can?
Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our meeting has already been called to order. We have an executive session. Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year.
Somebody's on a delay.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Our meeting. We have an executive session. Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us.
Says you're on YouTube. Yep, we've live streamed it. There's a YouTube bot.
Yeah. That's the first one I have. There you go.
Wow, that was new. Learn something else. At least it was just us.
He's not even doing it.
Great. Okay, we'll get going then. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land.
Mayor Rogan,
Yes,
sorry to interrupt. We saw the matter of the second executive session.
we're gonna address that during agenda.
Approval of the agenda.
Okay.
Is that okay, or should we do it now?
I don't think I was gonna care if we do it later, but I think correctly we do move to do that now because it is up next on the agenda.
All right, I move the second executive session regarding the sale of town-owned property to be the last item of the meeting. After trustee reports.
Second.
Any discussion?
And that motion passes
Okay,
unanimously.
thank you. Thanks for keeping us honest, Attorney Dittman.
Yes, sorry I had to interrupt, but
That's, we must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. Let's take a reflective moment of silence. Thank you, everybody. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anything anyone else would like to suggest? Okay, I'll vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, so now is the time for audience business. Anyone can address the board on any matter that is not the subject of a public hearing tonight. The only public hearing we have tonight is regarding the maintenance of vegetation in the town's right of way. When you come up to speak, please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 4 minutes. We ask that everybody keep their comments related to town business and address the board as a whole. And then once everybody has had an opportunity to speak, the board will have an opportunity to respond, each person on the board, and then staff will have an opportunity to respond. So you don't have to sit here all night long unless you absolutely want to. Okay, who do we have up first?
First, we have Patrick and Vanessa Hoffman.
Wow. You name.
Evening, I'm Patrick Hoffman. This is my wife Vanessa and son Thaddeus, and we're the owners of 441 Stickney Avenue. We currently live in Erie, but we've been trying to move to Lyons. We discovered this through a pizza party at the old Moxie location, and we're just blown away by the sense of community and how accepting people were of Thaddeus. I think he even got invited to a birthday party the same weekend. So it's been a dream of ours to move here. We had a chance to acquire Stickney, and as you can tell, we're not developers. We're trying to bootstrap this. My wife's trained as an architect, so this is very much a passion project, labor of love. To make this happen, we're trying to build an ADU, which we're going to move into, and then reconstruct the primary residence that we'll ultimately move into. So we'd love to buy outright. That's just not financially possible. We've applied for our building permit for the ADU. We're trying to build a modest structure of 650 square feet, but the size, I think it's about The
850 of the existing structure? That's that
So
right?
we're told we can only do 600. We understand the new law is gonna allow for 800. And so we're basically just asking if there's anything that you can do to update the code to reflect that. We don't even want the whole 800. We just want our 650 and want to move our project forward so we don't get lost in financing. Just, appreciate anything you can do on that front and very much look forward to being part of your community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next is Betsy Burton, followed by Chris Alvin.
Hello, everyone. Betsy Burton, 1308 Apple Valley Road. Haven't been here in a while, and I'm not here to talk about River Bend or music or the Farmette or anything that makes people nervous. And I'm also not here to talk about that I never want to see Apple Valley annexed, but it does feel good to say that out loud. I am here to talk about ping pong. It's a very important subject. So we were gone for a long time. I think some of y'all know that. And in Scandinavia and Europe, a lot of parks have ping pong tables that are permanent and they're metal and they have little metal nets and then they keep the balls and the paddles underneath. And since pickleball has been such a fantastic thing in this town, I'm thinking that a ping pong table over near the pickleball court, there's all that land around it between that and the park, wherever, would be a great addition to this town. So that's why I'm here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next is Chris Alred, followed by Paul Berge.
Pass around if you,
You can join.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Chris Allred. I'm a resident of Longmont and I work at Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center. I've been studying Rocky Flats and nuclear guardianship for about 10 years now. And I'm very thankful to join you all here in Lyons tonight. Been grateful to visit the dog park quite often and the St. Vrain Market with friends. And it's just such a beautiful community. And so really grateful for the opportunity to speak tonight. I was hoping to address the topic of Rocky Flats and the Rocky Mountain Greenway project, which you may have heard of, is a mountain bike trail that's been proposed to go through Rocky Flats, up through Boulder, through Lyons, up into Estes Park to the Rocky Mountain National Park. And I'm asking if the Board of Trustees would please be willing to pass a resolution opposing recreation at Rocky Flats. And any kind of sign-on letter or solidarity with the other local governments who are opposing this project, which continues to add up through the years, as you can see in this document, which shows a number of precedents that have been continuing to build. Most recently with Westminster City Council, who withdrew from the project at the 11th hour last September. They voted 4-3 to withdraw and deny more funding to this project because this project has been opposed since it was first proposed in 2016 by the community. The only reason it's made it this far is through manufactured consent and regulatory capture. And I could talk a lot more about the mechanisms of regulatory capture that have set up inadequate regulatory standards, Department of Energy funding for our state health department and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but it's a much longer story. I'd leave it to the experts to discuss this further. I've worked with John Lipsky, retired FBI agent, Dr. Harvey Nichols, PhD biologist who's done sampling at Rocky Flats, Dr. Michael Ketterer, PhD chemist, and many others who you can see on many of these records, which I'll send a follow-up email that includes this document in a PDF form so you can see all of these links and documents. So there's a fair amount of documentation. Some other precedents you can see. Broomfield withdrew from the project unanimously in 2020. The town of Superior rejected it unanimously and I believe is also considering newer updates to their opposition of recreation at Rocky Flats. 7 school districts in the region have opposed recreation at Rocky Flats, including St. Vrain Valley School District and Boulder Valley School District, and the largest district in the region, Denver Public Schools. So you can see there is a fair amount of evidence and reason for this. We should not be recreating on this contaminated land, and I think Lions has an important say in this matter, and your voice would really help to help encourage Boulder County right now. Boulder County is one of the main, the most urgent construction project is an underpass onto Boulder County on the north side of Rocky Flats. And that is underway as we speak. I mean, they're doing the elevations and checking to prepare for construction out there. They're already working on the Indiana Street overpass. So we really need to keep setting these precedents and making it known that this area is not for recreation. And I'd be glad to answer any questions and follow up. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Paul Berge. Did I say that correct? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Okay.
right. Hi, I'm Paul Berge. I know some of the folks. I live at 246 Park Street. And I'm here because of your agenda about changing some of the ordinances about tree maintenance, basically. My property is adjacent to, well, it used to be adjacent to 3 trees that were on town right of way. We just took out one of those, so now there's just one left. And one was out before that, but so we had 3 trees on 3rd Avenue. We're at the corner of 3rd and Park. We just spent $2,000 on taking out that tree. The other tree, if it has to be removed, will cost us $4,000. My wife and I are retired. We're in our 80s. We have a limited income, mostly Social Security. This is a big burden on us to have to pay for trees. My neighbor next door has a tree that failed, dropped on our greenhouse, okay? It had a rotted limb, dropped on our greenhouse, broke the greenhouse altogether. I decided not to claim my homeowner's insurance there because the insurance company made it clear that they would raise my rates. And we're already dealing with big insurance rates getting bigger, especially on automobiles. So, my issue is not about you changing the ordinances. My issue is about the ordinances forcing me to pay for the maintenance of these trees that's not on our property and we did not plant. And we have maintained them over the years. We've spent money trimming those trees just to keep, things from falling on my cars or whatever. Well, we have done that. And we now have a contract for the last tree there that hasn't fallen or causing any particular damage. We had it looked at by a tree guy, and they're going to come and trim it. And he said it doesn't have the emerald ash borer. These are ash trees, by the way. Your ordinances say we can't plant an ash tree on that property because of that. I suppose when that tree started growing, I was probably 20 years old. That was 60 years ago. Those trees were here when we arrived. Okay, so I feel like it's unfair, especially to people in our situation where, that amount of, we will, by the time they trim this other tree, we'll have spent $4,000 in the last 6 months for tree maintenance on the town property. I called my insurance agent about that. I said, does my homeowner's insurance cover, something to do with trees that are adjacent to my property, but not on my property? They had to call back to their other offices a couple times to get an answer to that. And they couldn't answer it. They said, we don't know, file a claim. So they're waiting for something bad to happen, and then they have every right to refuse the insurance because it isn't on my property. So I'm upset about not the change in the ordinance. You change it any way you want. I think the ordinance is very unfair to people who've been here for 30 years and can't afford to deal with the maintenance on these trees. A single large tree like the one that we still have standing there, $4,000 to remove it. A couple of years ago, we spent $3,500 to remove a tree that was on our property, but threatening the neighbor's house. So we've tried to be good stewards of what trees are there, but it's getting, sort of, too much to deal with the kind of income we have.
Thank you. Your time's up and we'll respond to
Yeah,
those
okay.
in a minute. Thank you.
That was all I had.
Anybody else care to address the board? Gail? Thank you, everybody. So the board will, take a couple minutes to respond here. Trustee Hammer, would you like to go first?
No. I really don't have any profound comments, but I appreciate everybody's input and, take things into consideration, so, including ping pong.
Thank you. Trustee Duffy?
Yeah, I'm thrilled to see the civic involvement here by our citizens and, you know, welcome to, Patrick and Vanessa. Is it Gladius? Yeah, welcome to all of you. I hope that we can find a solution moving forward. We spoke about ADUs during the workshop. We're gonna come back to it at the end of the meeting. I love the innovative idea of ping pong. I can think of a couple of spots where that would be a nice addition. And guess I'm a little bit confused about the Rocky Mountain Greenway. Is our bikeway, that bike pathway they're building from Boulder Lines part of that greenway, or is this different? I guess I'm a little bit confused about I don't know the Rocky Mountain Greenway very well, so I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I am aware of the family bikeway they'd like to build between North Boulder and Lyons, and I'm not sure if that's part of this or not.
I think the document that will be sent will give us some
Okay.
clarity.
So yeah, I just need more further clarity on that, and I really appreciate, Mr. Berkey, is it?
Yes.
Bringing it to our attention the cost of tree removal, because we are going to be talking about that tonight. So it's good that you are involved in bringing these subjects to our attention so that when we have these discussions, we can, we have something to refer to. So thank you, everybody, for your input.
Trustee Lowell?
Betsy, I saw a ping pong table of all places up in a park in Maine. And when I first saw it, I thought about our parks and a nice polished sandstone ping pong.
Sandstone.
Good idea.
Now you're talking.
Right? I think the Parks and Rec Commission ought to take that on
Yes.
and take a look at it.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No additional comments.
Trustee Browning?
Couple of quick comments. I appreciate the input on the ADU. It helps sometimes to associate it when we're talking about all these things in the abstract, and associated with this specific property. And so that's been helpful. And as to the tree ordinance, a couple of things that you said, re-raise some things that I had mentioned a few weeks ago when we looked at this, and still haven't been clarified in my mind. And that's a distinction between what is a town right of way or town property. And the answer I got from the paraphrasing from the town attorney is, it depends on old conveyancing documents and plats and that type of thing. And we typically refer a lot to things being in the quote unquote town right of way. But there's a difference legally between a right of way that somebody has to go across somebody else's property and ownership of the property. And I'm not clear at this point whether what we commonly call town right of way might in some instances might actually be town property ownership. And the insurance issue that you mentioned is a perfect example. If it's town property and the problem tree is on town property, I'd be amazed if the neighboring owner's insurance would pay for it like that. But if all the town has is a right of access and use across somebody else's property, the tree is actually on private homeowner's property, maybe insurance would pay for it. So there's some legal distinctions here that need to be looked at, and I appreciate you raising it, and I think it's a very valid point. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Dillon?
So I appreciate what everybody has said tonight, and then Betsy, I have it on my list now to bring up to the Parks and Rec about ping pong tables.
You. Yeah, I also, it's great to see a full house here of, people in a good mood, so thank you for joining us. As somebody who has no depth perception, ping pong is challenging, however, I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad Parks and Rec is gonna take a look at it. Chris, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, and especially for sending along, that document with the links. Really appreciate that. And I agree with Trustee Browning about the legal delineations between right of way and property. I think that's something that we should take a look at. So, yeah, thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. Okay, so we'll, see if staff has anything to add.
Just a couple of things. As I told the Hoffmans, the board's going to discuss ADUs tonight, one of which will be, should there be size restrictions? And the process to follow that, because they are looking currently at taking this to Board of Adjustments. And if tonight's discussion directs staff to remove those, it may be faster to wait for the ordinance than go through Board of Adjustments. So keep posted on that. Betsy, I've never heard of this, so I think it's really exciting. I'd be interested to see how it all works, like if the paddles are connected or.
Oh, no, you just bring your own, or they're just kept under the.
Yeah, so I'm glad that will be going. I'd also, I guess, depending on if the board does have any interest in pursuing this, this should probably also go to the Parks and Rec Commission regarding trails, if they would recommend doing a resolution to oppose it. So that would take us a little while because they only meet once a month. But, and then back to the Board of Trustees. But if so, we'll move that along to Parks and Rec as well. And in regard to Paul's, I know that's very frustrating, and we do know how expensive trees are because we have to maintain a lot of them. I think when the board talks about this again tonight, the biggest issue is a lot of people inherited their trees when they bought their property. But we also know the town has a policy right now that you are not to plant trees in the right of way. And it is happening all over the subdivisions we have. And so those people, to me, are taking on the responsibility. But how do you track trees owned by private individuals in our right of way 30 years from now? You know, it's a tough situation to be in. Or we need to start enforcing that you can't plant trees when people do a building permit and they have to take them out. But we all know we want a tree canopy. We want, you know, that extra protection from the sun. We want, you know, the contribution of the oxygen to our community. But this is challenging because old trees are hard to define who planted those. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about it, but they will be having a full discussion about that tonight. And if you don't want to stay for it, you can watch it on YouTube. That's all. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to staff reports, Boulder County Sheriff's Office.
Good evening, happy New Year, Merry Christmas. Let's see, so not a whole lot, just working on the annual report that will get sent out here soon. All our deputies we have two changes, so the deputy, it's both on night shift, but our front side deputy started last year and then he went to Superior, so he's coming back. And then,
Excuse me, y'all, if you wouldn't mind, we're continuing it down a bit, thank you.
And then for the backside, the current night shift deputy is going to a different district, so we'll get another deputy. He's a newer kid, but he's pretty squared away, so. Those pictures and bios and stuff like that will be in their annual report. So the end of the year, 2024 calls, we were at 2,692, and that's up 140 or 171 from last year. December of this year, last year, we had 136 calls, and that was down 27 from 23. End of the year tickets was 641, and that was up 73 from last year. And then December we had 3, and then last December we had 12. So tickets should hopefully be going up now with, extra duty, starting out new year with extra duty, so. And then, talk, we had almost, just a little over 95,000 cars come into town from, off Ute Highway. And then all of 2024, we had just over 2 million cars, so. Quite a bit. And that's just reading the license plate once in a 24-hour period, so if you have a car that comes into town 10 times, it only counts once. We didn't make it through the end of the year with no more accidents. We had one minor, this guy didn't even know he hit the truck with his trailer. It's a pretty minor accident, but so we ended the year at 40 versus 28 last year. So we're on a good streak over there for a couple months, so. And then the last, bot camera, I got an email today that it should be hopefully installed. They said they're planning on it the 8th, so hopefully. Other than that, that's pretty much all I got.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions for Sergeant Sears?
Yeah, I have a question. If you're able to educate us and the general public as to any new laws that have come into effect as of January 1st.
So we just got a legal update sent today. I was at training all day, so I didn't read it, but I have seen on like those highway, that's, so I think any electronic cell phone device in your hand, whether on speakerphone or what, is against the law. Which I was gonna follow up on that. I don't know when, it says January 1st, but usually new laws go into effect in July. That's
It's in effect now.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's January.
So I have to look into that and then see what that goes to with our traffic, update ordinances, for that. But yeah, I'll look into that and get more info out for that, so.
Is that an incidental violation? In other words, if you pick me up for speeding or you see me doing something and I have a phone in my hand, or can you pick me up for the phone in my hand?
Oh, yeah, you can be stopped for phone in your hand. Because a lot of times, if you pass somebody and, they're on their phone, before it was like you're texting and driving, like I wasn't there. I was, but it's how do you prove that? And, but yeah, so I think it now just I know a lot of other states, like I think Texas and I know California, you have to have like total hands-free device to be on the phone, so. Which I guarantee that's why accidents are up so high as phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Other questions for Sergeant Sears? So, you said calls are up by 170-ish, 171. Could you kind of let us know what kinds of calls those are?
Yeah, so so most of our calls are pretty equal from, where it comes to property crimes, or actually our property crimes were actually lower this year than last year, but, most of that is traffic and extra patrols. So like, our extra patrols went down a little bit because of the weather and the parks not being as busy, but that's where, we were up our, traffic stops, even though our, ticket numbers are still, we had, 641 tickets. Well, not every traffic stop's a ticket, and a lot, I found out, so when I'm pulling the calls, if someone does a traffic stop for a violation in town, but outside of town limits, like a lot of times, like, South St. Vrain and Old St. Vrain's a spot where we stop a lot of cars. Well, the violation occurred in town, but when you're pulling the calls, it's not showing it was actually in town because we were out of town for the stop. But I can, do a deeper dive into that, but there's nothing like, other than those things, extra patrol, stuff like that, there's nothing, too much of a difference than last year. Everything was pretty consistent. This was actually a really good, pretty quiet year for clients, so.
Yeah, let's keep it that way, huh?
Yeah, so.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Stay safe.
Yeah, have a good evening. Thank you.
Administrative report, please. Sure. My administrative report is kind of short too with the holidays. The St. Vrain Trail Extension is going along nicely. This week, they will be putting in the Highland Ditch abutments to cross the Highland Ditch. So they are on schedule. I don't know if the weather tomorrow might affect that, but we're supposed to start today. So, Rough and Ready and Palmerton Ditch are those structures are being worked on, but installation will start for Highland. The special use permit for the CDOT right-of-way to use the tables and chairs, that permit has been updated and extended. For the Main Street side, we're working on a separate agreement for the Highway 7 side. And we do have a legal agreement to enter into with each property owner that is in legal review right now, and then we'll get those signed before, spring arrives. There was a little update on parking fee revenue for 2024. It was up about 9% from last year, so people are starting to use some of those kiosks more, especially now that they can text and pay. That seems to be helpful. I did have a note in my report about a letter of support regarding leaf to Boulder County. So unless there's anyone who wants to bring that up during their trustee reports, the mayor and I will draft that and get that submitted. And then I haven't heard how the tree pickup went or the tree chipping went this weekend yet. Haven't got that update. And we know?
There are a lot of people there, both times I went.
Both times. Good. We do want to say annual parking passes are now able to be pulled for 2025 for anyone who lives within the town residence, as a resident. You get one resident parking pass per household free. Or you can get a second pass if you need one for your household for $40. And then there's a different rate for out of town residents, but we are now taking those here at town halls. Online too, Kim? Or
Yes.
no, both online and town hall. You can get those signed up for, so, I hope the property tax colors were better. Were they better for you? Okay, good, good. And, we have started our information, sharing about the paperless billing push that we're going through. So that has started. Also I have one other update that I wanted to give, but we didn't have it before this went out on Thursday. If you recall, the board authorized, vehicle purchase replacements. You guys had authorized a $50,000 toward upgraded utility, and some vehicles that ours are reaching, well, they've passed their useful life. And so I wanted to let you know that I contacted Boulder County and their fleet manager. I finally got the right person. He said, starting not 2025, but 2026, their electric vehicles will start rotating out. But for 2025, they do have 5 different patrol vehicles, which is how we got the escapes, that they are rotating out. They are willing to upgrade our 2 escapes into 2 explorers for the guys that wanted trucks to haul. That'd be for the utility director and the town engineer that need to carry cones and shovels and a few things with them at a very reduced rate. And then we did find a 2023 all-electric VW i4D for they reduced the rate today, 25,300. So we can upgrade those 3 vehicles if the board's good with that for this year. And we'll be able to do that for under the 50,000. And then hopefully next year we can start working really closely with Boulder County to start getting more electric. But all new electric vehicles, we're gonna take all 50,000. So we found this 1-year-old. And then if that's good, we'll rotate out those escapes and replace those 2 for the 2 that really wanted pickups. We could not find electric pickups that were in that range to get to. So if that's okay with the board, we'd like to move forward with those. Okay. And then there was also an insert in your packet about this Colorado Green Business Network. And I heard from some of you individually, but this is just a voluntary program where they would come and give us some technical assistance on how to improve sustainability at town hall specifically. And that can be then shared with local businesses if we wanted to, but it's a way to get connected with, it's through the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and Cassidy Davenport would be our lead on that. Any questions?
Any questions?
One question about parking fees.
Yeah,
It's good that they're up, glad people are using the kiosks.
yep.
Is there someone who actually checks for, or some sort of dashboard or whatever, or
Kim Mitchell wants to be
someone actually?
deputized. Kim wants to be deputized. So we do have our security firm can look at that, but they can't write tickets.
Right,
So if we have a sheriff in the area who's willing to do that, because on some busy weekends they can. But, I don't really want to publicize that, but previously we have not been able to write tickets on that, but I
check when staff goes over, we look, in, at the dashboards.
so
I thought the code compliance person was able to do
they
that.
can do it, but
Uh-huh.
code compliance hasn't traditionally worked on the busiest parking days.
Got it. Trustee Lowe?
In that regard, I always thought it would be a good idea to simply start out gently with sort of an education program and put something on the windshield and said, hey,
Yes.
it's paid parking
Yep.
here.
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, that's a consideration before we go to the actual ticketing.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll drive up compliance.
Just a couple of comments. One, on parking revenues,
Mhm.
I was shocked. 140K, maybe I missed that when we went through the budget,
Oh.
but that's a lot of money
Yeah.
for parking.
And that's not
No one
counting
knew it
the
was that
special event part.
magnitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is a huge
Yeah.
revenue generator for our parks.
And thank you for following up on the support for leave, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, so, I think that's a great idea, and I'm really honest. Kim has said, if you would deputize me, I will write tickets on the weekends. I don't know how to do that, but I'll ask Cody how to do that.
Yeah, I don't think it's up to us. I think that's, we'll call Karen Johnson. Trustee Duffy?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the Colorado Green Business Network, which I think is great for looking at some sustainability challenges that town hall is facing. I'm supposed to be meeting with Edward King on Monday, following his presentation to the board regarding sustainability practices.
Mhm.
So I feel like these go hand in hand. I really don't
Yes.
know anything about this network. I just learned about this
Sure.
now, well, a few days ago. But I'm just wondering, is this only for sustainable challenges here at town hall, or is it
No.
throughout?
It can be much further, but
Okay.
because we haven't been a part of it, we wanted to see what it was
Sure.
like before we encouraged others to get involved. But Cassidy Davenport is really interested in sustainability measures, and she is attending those meetings, so.
Yeah.
She could certainly, if you could tell the chair of the SFC, if they're willing to give her 10 minutes on the agenda, she's be happy to share it, I'm sure.
We have a meeting Thursday night, so I
That
haven't
would be
seen the
awesome.
agenda yet, but yeah, when I saw that, I thought it would be good to engage the SFC in this.
Yeah. Sure.
Because I think there's opportunities for the SFC to, really provide some impetus for the, not just town-owned sites, but for commercial businesses.
Absolutely.
Residents, I think there's a lot more we could be.
Yeah,
doing.
and she was on here earlier, maybe she's
Yeah.
watching on YouTube, but I'm sure she'd be thrilled to share this. Oh, and we did get, I will send this out, but late, I think it was on Friday, we received our Sursa property audit formal report, so I will send that out. We have to respond, I think, in 2 weeks, within 2 weeks. I do want to mention to the board, one of the things they mentioned is that town hall is not ADA accessible. And so, I don't know how in 2 weeks we're going to address that, but I'll send you that report, and we're gonna have to do a little research on what things can we do. Despite, they totally appreciate we're in a historic building and that we've done what we can on this side, but, nonetheless, we're not meeting that. And, they want to prevent, since they are our risk manager, they want to prevent any type of claim that could come. So we might have to have a little further discussion.
Thank you very much.
But I'll give you a heads up, but we'll send out the report.
Is there a legal update, Attorney Dittman?
Sorry, searching for the mute button. So, no legal report. I think we have plenty of legal discussion today, and we already had a bunch. So, I'll save you any more torture.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn as the Board of Trustees and convene as the Lions Liquor Licensing Authority? Is there a second?
Okay.
Any discussion? I'll call for the vote. Thank you. So that means that next up on the agenda is the new tavern liquor license. The way these hearings are conducted are pretty formal, and so I have a document in front of me that I'm gonna be reading from to make sure that I get it right. Okay. So I call to order a public hearing of the Lions Liquor Licensing Authority. The authority shall consider the application for the new tavern liquor license application submitted by Wildcat Tavern located at 430 Main Street. The application submitted to the town clerk together with all supporting documents are hereby made part of the record. Any other documents presented to the authority during this hearing shall also be made part of the record if a copy is given to the town clerk. Was the notice properly posted and published for this matter?
Yes, it was. And I think there was a posting included in the packet as well.
Thank you. I'm gonna make a motion. I move that the entire corporate limits of the town of Lyons be considered as the neighborhood for the purposes of this liquor license application and public hearing. Brandon, do I need a second on that?
You do not, you just moved to make it. I don't think we ever voted on that before.
Okay, great. All right. The applicant may make a presentation to the authority concerning the requested liquor license application. After the applicant, other interested persons will be provided an opportunity to address the authority. The applicant and any other person who speaks may ask questions of and cross-examine any other person who speaks at this hearing. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Would you like me to?
Only if you want to.
I'll just do it short.
Okay.
I think I've met most of you, so Aaron.
Just introduce yourself.
My name's Tony Miller. I'm the owner of 430 Main Street, Wildcat Mountaineering and Wildcat Tavern LLC. We are, asking the board for a tavern liquor license to serve beer, wine, and liquor at 430 Main Street once again. So, yeah, that's about it. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Miller? No? All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to address the authority? Okay. Is or will the applicant be in legal possession of the premises, and has the applicant provided to the town evidence ownership or lease agreement?
Yes, they have, and I believe the sublease was also included in the packet.
Great, thank you. Does the zoning of the property permit the proposed liquor use?
It sure does, yes.
Does the applicant hold another liquor license or have an interest in any other business which is licensed under the state laws governing liquor licenses?
No,
Did the town's investigation of the applicant disclose any reason why the applicant cannot hold the license he is requesting?
no, it,
Has a liquor license been denied for the same premises or for a premise within 500 feet of the applicant's premises within the last 2 years, based on a finding that the needs of the neighborhood do not support a new liquor business?
no,
Okay. Then I move to approve the liquor license application for a new tavern liquor license application submitted by Wildcat Tavern located at 430 Main Street. I specifically find that the establishment meets the reasonable needs of the neighborhood and the desires of the adult residents of the neighborhood. Is there a second?
Okay.
Any discussion? No?
oh,
That,
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
no, just, this particular property has a long history in Lyons, and a lot of people have fond memories of evenings spent there, in years past, and the loss of the prior business there was mourned by a lot of people around here, and it's good to see somebody giving it another try and really shoot the best of success.
I'll add that, this is a little bit of an anomaly in that usually when we get liquor license applications, the premises have been built out and there's a certificate of occupancy. So, I would like the board to consider that we make this contingent on a certificate of occupancy for the premises.
Just for a little background, that was discussed, with Mr. Miller. Maria did discuss that with him. I know he's working with Aaron and Fire to get those approvals, but it also does take time once we get it approved at this step to send it to the state and get it approved. So, I can also just have, Victoria update the board when we do get CO and that is issued.
But in the meantime, if this is approved, we'd like to send it to the state to get started.
Yes, let's do that.
But yeah, we don't want him, we told him we don't want him serving out of a cooler on the patio, so he's gotta wait for his CO.
Brandon, is that an amendment that I'm
Yeah.
suggesting?
Yeah, we'll need a motion, a second, and a vote on that.
Okay, so I've made the motion to amend, the liquor license to be, effective contingent on the certificate of occupancy. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, let's vote on the amendment.
That motion passes unanimously.
Terrific. And if there are no more amendments, we'll vote on the motion as amended.
And that also passes unanimously.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for contributing to our Main Street.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been so much fun.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn as the Lions Liquor Licensing Authority and reconvene as the Board of Trustees?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
All right, so we'll move on to ordinances and public hearings. Tonight, we have a second reading and public hearing of ordinance 1179. An ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 7450 of the Lyons Municipal Code regarding maintenance and vegetation in the town's right of way. We have a brief staff report, please.
So ordinance 1179 was brought forward to try to simplify the ability for property owners to do minor maintenance of trees and bushes, shrubs that are bordering the town right of way in their property. And I suppose that for second reading, but the language was modified slightly based on the discussion there. And so section 7450 was updated to try to more accurately define the property that the code is applying itself to.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yes, I guess. That includes Brandon, right?
Yes.
And we talked about this before, about right of ways versus property, and to be perfectly candid, until the gentleman made his comments here tonight, I haven't really looked at the contrast of particular language. I guess this is the question for Brandon to address the difference. But if you look at the section 2 of this ordinance in part B, the first sentence is what? I guess the gentleman who was speaking here, what requires him to maintain trees and pay for things. The owner of property abutting a public right of way shall be responsible for maintenance of trees, shrubs, so forth. But then look at the last sentence of that same section. It says, the requirements of this section shall not apply to properties owned by the town, paraphrasing, that are not intended for development. So it makes a big difference doesn't it, if you contrast that first sentence and the second sentence of whether the town actually owns the property or not. If it's the town's ownership of the property the tree's on, the last sentence says it doesn't apply, whereas if it's the town's right of way, it might apply.
Yeah. I mean, I think the second sentence that you spoke of is it's meant for buyout properties in other types of open space where we're not going to.
Or any other town-owned property that is not intended for development, which would be.
Not intended for development. I think right away is intended, it has been developed. I think, that the issue, I think I thought this where this was going is how do we know what's right away and what's not? And that you have to look at the plat really and see what is it, right? Was it dedicated as right away at any point in time? And the dimensions of that are going to be different on every single, property. And so I mean, really have to do a property by property analysis to determine whether or not, it's in the right of way or not. But that's why we moved to the abutting. So it was more clear as to when this would apply.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, if there are no questions for staff, I'll open the public hearing. Would anybody like to address the board on this matter? Looks like it. So I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Would you like to make a motion?
Amendment we approve ordinance 1179, the second reading, ordinance of the county of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 7-4-0 the Lyons Municipal Code regarding maintenance of education at the town.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, discussion.
I don't know if I'm comfortable voting on this ordinance yet. I just have some questions in it. To me, this is somewhat similar to the other town ordinance that's always bugged me, which is that still says that property owners have the responsibility for fixing sidewalks that are broken in front of their houses. You don't make them do that because the cost would be astronomical, but it's on the books. And to me, but on the other hand, I get that if private property owner has planted a tree and is dropping limbs on the town sidewalk and on the street, that it shouldn't be the town's responsibility, the town, meaning the other taxpayers' responsibility, to pay for dealing with that. But I just, I'm not comfortable with this ordinance yet. That's just where I am.
What would make you comfortable?
I don't know, some more specific delineation of the process maybe for determining when somebody has to spend thousands of dollars to maintain or cut down a tree or something like that.
Having just spent $10,000, I understand that. Brandon?
Oh, I was wondering if the question is still about that last sentence, and I think the solution, at least to that, would be to say non-right of way if we're still concerned about it.
Any other? I mean, to me, town, again, I don't know whether the areas beside streets and so forth are actually, like you say, would take a plat and almost a title search to figure it out, are town-owned property or not. But that last sentence says, if it's town-owned property, I don't think those things are necessarily intended for development. It may just be to give access to street repairs and water and sewer lines and stuff. So
yeah,
that last sentence, I'm just not sure where this leads us, I guess, is my problem.
I mean, I think you could say non-right of way properties owned by the town, if that would, kind of take that out of, falling into that clause.
Attorney Chipman, hold that thought for a second. Administrator Simonson?
I'd like to just make a suggestion that because this change really applied to being able to take away the need for a permit for minor, could we consider passing this tonight? And then if we want to take a closer look at these other two issues, so we could take them to the different boards or whatever, and then bring it back as an amendment again, because this is really, it's not changing. We didn't suggest any changes to any language other than you don't need a permit for minor maintenance, because we aren't following our own code. We aren't issuing permits when people just want to trim 14 inches.
Trustee Dowdy?
So just to clarify, does this mean that the property owner has always been responsible for the cost?
Always.
Okay.
But they were supposed to get a permit if they even wanted to do minor maintenance, like your trees, hitting someone in the face on the sidewalk. They were supposed to get a permit, and this would make they don't have to do that.
So really the question is whether they need a permit or not. That's what we're
This is,
deciding.
yeah, that's
More
what
of a
we
permit question
changed.
as opposed to a cost.
Yeah, but if you're saying that this overall section needs revised, which maybe it does, I don't think we're ready for that tonight, but we'd love to get this part about not needing a permit passed if possible.
And I agree with trustee Browning that this is gonna take a little bit more thought
Mhm.
to tease apart, and we probably won't do that tonight, so. I'd be amenable to just passing this tonight, cleaning up this code, and then if the board agrees in the future, figuring out what those issues actually are that we have to take a look at.
And the difference of the right of way and town property, and if we can find a better way, and what other communities that are tree cities are doing. I mean, this could take a while. Trustee Lowe.
Yeah, I would pass this tonight per your suggestion, but I think we need to have a larger discussion on property owners' responsibilities within the right of ways. And as you recall, we ran into this on McConnell straightaway, where adjacent property owners were being going to be in violation of the noxious weeds because they had grown too tall. I find it all a little troubling. The sidewalk thing is just out of the blue. Wherever I have lived, the town has always maintained the rights of way. They've had the ability to go in there, take down trees, take down brush, whatever impedes public safety or is a hazard. To the consternation often of the property owners who said, why are you taking my tree down? It's not your tree, it's in the right of way, it needs to come down. So let's have a larger discussion about property owners vis-a-vis rights of way and their responsibilities at some point, and let's get this done tonight.
Anyone else? We have a motion and a second, so I will call for a vote on this, and trustee Browning, feel free to bring something up in your trustee report later. Yeah.
And the motion passes 6-1 with trustee Browning voting against.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, Clerk Vasquez, would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Item 1 is resolution 2025-01, resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, designating the official public notice location and the official newspapers of general circulation for the town of Lyons. Item 2 is resolution 2025-02, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the renewal of professional services with the Adams Group LLC to perform 2024 financial audit services for the town of Lyons. Item 3 is resolution 2025-03, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, providing for additional appropriation during fiscal year 2024 for unanticipated 2024 revenues and expenditures required of the town of Lyons, Colorado. Item 4 is resolution 2025-04, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, accepting grant funds from the St. Vrain Left-Hand Water Conservancy District for a stream flow study. Item 5 are the December 16th, 2024 regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes, and item 6 are the January accounts payable.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Anything anyone would like to remove from consent tonight? Great, we'll vote on consent.
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you, everybody. All right, moving on to boards and commissions. It is my great pleasure to appoint Patty McNichol to the Lions Arts and Humanities Commission. So welcome, Patty, if you're out there listening on YouTube. All right, moving on to general business. Next up, we have discussion direction to staff on lodging tax. I know it's only 8 o'clock, but I think this might take a bit of time. So it's okay with everybody. I would like to just call a brief bio recess. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate that break. So the first item on general business tonight is discussion direction to staff on lodging tax. We had an extensive memo in the packet, and thank you, Mr. Tucker, for providing information. So let's have a brief staff report and then we'll dive into the conversation. Then Mr. Tucker, if we have questions, I assume you'd be willing to participate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Am
Okay.
I allowed to make a presentation at all or no?
Not during general business, no, but that's why we really appreciate the memo you provided.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, who would like to take the staff report?
The attorney.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Rogan. So I just want to start off this discussion by saying that matters of tax interpretation are often complicated, so this is not unusual. It's the reason why you see so many different IRS guidelines every year or state Department of Revenue guidelines, because these things are complicated in unique situations like we have here. And sometimes those interpretations do change over time. And so you as I already mentioned, you had a fairly extensive staff report on this, but I do want to add a little bit more to that in terms of the history here, which I think is really kind of the important part to understanding, why there's an issue, and why we need board direction to say what should be the policy going forward. So in addition, well, actually, we'll start with what it was in the packet, which is in 2018, the $2 night on provisions of lodging, was passed by the electors and Lions. That did include $2 per campsite. But, the issue quickly arose as to what is a campsite when there's not, individually out campsites, is diffuse camping, as is the case in Planet Bluegrass. And this led to many different disputes between the town and Planet Bluegrass as to how to interpret the lodging tax with regard to this unique system where, they pay for a camping pass and not camping sites. What does the $2 apply to? Does it apply to per person, or does it apply to per campsite? And if it does apply to per campsite, how many, campsites are there? And so this eventually culminated in a demand letter that the town sent at the direction of the Board of Trustees to Planet Bluegrass in 2020, early 2021. We've formed a Planet Bluegrass subcommittee at that time, which consisted of, I think, then Trustee Rogan and then Mayor Pro Tem Browning, to help negotiate basically a settlement to that demand letter. And that settlement kind of put forth the path forward on a number of different issues, including the lodging tax that we have here today. And so what that settlement basically did, among other things with regard to the taxes, it did lay out that a campsite would be defined as, 5 individuals, which was a compromise position. It was not what everybody wanted on either side, I think, but it was a compromise position. However, the language in that settlement agreement did say, and you can pull it up later if you want to, that that would be adjusted according to whatever changes were made in the Lions Municipal Code. So it did account for, potential changes in the future. Later in 2021, going into 2022, which really stemmed in a lot of ways from the settlement, as well as various changes that Planet Bluegrass wanted to make to their operations. We went through an extensive process of revising the 2 different zoning documents, which really apply to the Planet Bluegrass properties, which are the keynotes and the amendable letters of understanding. And again, these documents reflected, that it would be subject to whatever the code, the lodging tax would be whatever the code said. And we had agreed that we would change the code to memorialize the 5, campsite understanding that we had come to in the settlement agreement. We also made another change, I think it often gets lost in this discussion, to the definition of monetary consideration, which would, that definition, according to the amendment we made, which is in the code today, includes not just, the individual price of camping per se, but also, or, camping packages or other travel packages that included lodging, that the tax would be applicable to that as well. So that was another major change that was made, or contemplated at that time being made. And in early 2022 as part of the very complicated, I can't stress how complicated it was, process of amending those administrative letters of understanding and the keynotes. Again, part of the process was amending the code that we all agreed upon doing. But for whatever reason, due to the complication, we never got to a second reading on that, just by a pure mistake. And so we'd all thought that it had been done and over with, but in fact, we never got to a second reading on that. And so later that year, in August of 2022, we did go back and actually implement that ordinance exactly as it was written in early 2022, which included, again, the change of the campsite and change to the monetary consideration. However, at that time, it was still under the $2 per lodging night regime. Also, at that same time, we were looking at doing a ballot measure to change it from a dollar figure to a percentage figure for a variety of different reasons. But, just looking forward to the future and the administration of this, and rather than going, having to go to a ballot measure every time we wanted to go from $2 to $3, percentages just made more sense. And so that's where this issue kind of comes into play, where is now being changed from a dollar per room night to a percentage of the amount paid for lodging. And how does that work, for the Planet Bluegrass situation specifically, again, where they're selling camping passes as part of a larger package, and there is no, individual accommodations per se. And so we can get into what happened during those discussions later, but I think what was presented, I think, indisputably was two different ways of looking at this, which was percentage based on the camping pass, or based on campsites. And Director Eyestone put up a graphic on the screen during that meeting that I think she's put it again in this meeting, that showed both ways of calculating this, essentially, that both were possibilities at least. And so the staff, their understanding at the time, which was supported by some of the legislative history, was that we were going to use the campsite methodology for calculating how Planet Bluegrass would be charged lodging taxes. Again, legislative bodies can change their mind on how they interpret things. And so, there's now been a question as to whether that's the correct way of interpreting the ballot language, or whether there's a different way that makes sense, given all we know now about administering these programs. And I think it's important to stress that I don't think anyone made a mistake here per se. It's just really, like other things, subject to interpretation. And so long as it's a reasonable interpretation, Colorado state law says we can make those, interpretations. We can't make arbitrary, capricious, or absurd, interpretations of our own code. But so long as our interpretation of our code is reasonable, a Colorado court will uphold it. And I think, both of the ones that were proposed back in 2022 and are being proposed now have some basis for support for the various different means. And so the task before the Board of Trustees here tonight really is to give direction on how this should be interpreted. And I think what can flow from that is some sort of guidance document, either by changing the code, by amending Planet Bluegrass's numerous agreements, although I hope that's not what we want to do, or putting out a guidance document administratively saying this is how this will be applied currently. And so it's just really to figure out, how do we want to apply the percentage, whether that be on the price paid for accommodation or based on the price paid per accommodation, in which case the 5 people per campsite would come into play. And so again, this is purely a policy decision for the board. I can help with legal interpretation and how courts would review this, but I just know that the board is given an incredible deference on interpreting its own code. And so it really is up to the board to make a decision.
Thank you, Attorney Dittman. Director Eystone, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
No, I think Attorney Dittman summarized it well. There is, as he mentioned, a document in there that was presented at the time we brought the
ballot question to the board, which shows the difference in financial impact should it be interpreted as a flat fee or a percentage base. But I agree with him that I think that this is clearly a, an interpretation, and at the time, staff and others were under the assumption that it was to be per campsite for Planet Bluegrass. And so that's the way that the revenue was submitted this year.
Thank you very much. And apologies, I seem to be losing my voice. Okay, so trustee Browning, would you like to start the discussion?
Yeah, I guess so. Brandon did a good job of reviewing the history, but I would like to highlight a couple of things he mentioned. Both with the original lodging tax back in 2018 and with the revised lodging tax that went to a percentage basis in 2022. Planet Bluegrass appeared both times when those were under consideration and asked that their effective dates be set so that they did not, so they could have the opportunity to price the next year's festival and song school and academy camping according to the change, according to the new tax in 2018 and the revised tax in 2022. And both times, the town, the boards of trustees, different boards of trustees granted that. So they basically gave them 2 1-year delays periods. After the first one, the initial $2 a night lodging tax was passed, the controversy that arose was the Planet Bluegrass had not either passed through to its customers or paid lodging tax for the academy that preceded Rocky Grass Festival or the song school that preceded the Folks Festival. They interpreted it that was part of a package, as Attorney Dittman said, and that they didn't specifically charge separately for camping, so they didn't know any tax. And that's what generated the demand letter. And that's also what generated the reason that we changed the code to say that the consideration paid included a package deal. And the way that was resolved, compromise again, was the town sent a demand letter for capacity tax, penalty and interest, but was fairly substantial by that time. And the compromise on that was that the town forgave the penalties and interest that had accrued the late payment of Planet Bluegrass eventually paid the tax based on the $2 a night and the $5 per campsite. So point of all that is basically say that town board has a history of being accommodating the Planet Bluegrass. We weren't trying to specifically figure out and make Planet Bluegrass come out of pocket to pay into this tax. And I would point out a very important feature of this is the tax is actually imposed on the person, the entity that provides the light. So Planet Bluegrass owes the tax, not the campers who actually come in. But Planet Bluegrass has the ability, if it so chooses, and you think those businesses would, to pass through the tax that it's going to have to pay and include it in what it charges and collects from its campers. So I think it's important to keep in mind that this does not necessarily come out of Planet Bluegrass's pocket. Ultimately, if Planet Bluegrass chooses to do it, it's the campers who pay. A couple of other points. To me, I wasn't on the board in 2022 when the tax got changed from $2 per night to a percentage. But I was glad to see it happen because I thought it was simpler. And then we were all looking at, and that board at that time was looking, I believe, toward the possibility of the future hotel. And whereas we had very little lodging tax really in Lyons because we didn't have a hotel when it first got passed, it made a big difference going forward. And the language of the ballot measure that's in the packet, to me, simple both linguistically and mathematically. It says 5% of consideration paid. It no longer depends on how many people occupy a campsite. If you look at the ballot language, the only reference to campsite in that ballot language is to the old $2 per night method of doing it. That's the only reference to campsite in that ballot language. And it specifically says that that old ordinance is gonna be changed. And as Attorney Dittman just explained, the board can change a tax anytime it wants to, and it can interpret its new tax as it wishes to. And I would also point out that in the ballot language, in the resolution approving the ballot language, it's got this finding. The board finds that the effect of a yes or no vote will be clear to the electors. And as someone who wasn't on the board at the time, and wasn't an elector at the time, when I see 5% of consideration paid, and then the ordinance we ultimately passed to implement that new, after the voters approved it, says 5% of the price paid. To me, that's pretty simple, and I think it was clear to the electors. And I think when the Lions voters voted on charging a tax of 5% of consideration paid, it doesn't distinguish between camping, hotels, Airbnbs, tiny homes. It's what you see in many municipalities all around the country and all over the state. And Denver basically pays for its airport with 10% or more hotel tax. And to me, it's simple mathematically and it's simple linguistically. And I understand that there may have been confusion on Planet Bluegrass's part because of all the complicated things we've gone through in the past. And it's my position that once again, I think we should be accommodating to Planet Bluegrass, and instead of saying you should have collected the 5% tax of total consideration paid for your 2024 festivals, and 2023 was under the old tax. Only 2024, only this past year's festivals and pre-festival events were covered by it. We could be in a position that we were in back when the first tax and say, oh, you didn't pay the tax you owed, here's a demand ladder, penalty and interest, so forth. Because of the confusion that I think in Planet Bluegrass's case was a legitimate confusion, I do not think we should do that. And I think to the extent, if we adopt the interpretation that it's 5% of consideration paid, that we should also basically adopt that prospectively, not retrospectively, and not pursue Planet Bluegrass for any past due tax penalty or interest for 2024. If we adopt that interpretation now, Planet Bluegrass can price its camping sales for its upcoming festivals and pre-festival events accordingly. And if it so chooses, it can collect the tax from the people who pay for the camping. To me, that's the way we should go. And I think the language in the ballot measure and in our ordinance adopting the ballot measure is pretty simple. Mathematically and linguistically, I think that it should be followed. Because I think that's what the voters thought was gonna happen when they voted. That's why.
Thank you. Typically, I ask for the whole board's input and then I give my own, but I think because both trustee Browning and I have such a long history with this topic, I think I'm gonna take the point of privilege and just go ahead and go next. So trustee Browning's correct, when he talks about, first of all, how much time and energy was spent. And I also want to add that it showed an incredible amount of patience on the part of not just the task force that was assigned and trustee Dittman, but the planet too. It was a painful and long process that I know nobody wants to go through ever again. And trustee Browning's also correct that, you know, when the previous board, and I'll point out there are 4 members of the previous board on this board. When we talked about the updating the way we calculate lodging tax from a dollar base to a percentage base, the reason that really came about was because of the hotel. You know, there's a huge opportunity that we saw for the hotel. I know that for me, that's still the main reason to do this. You know, we're hoping that we get more lodging in town. We're hoping that we can take advantage of that. I do think that it is reasonable to collect the taxes from the planet the way that we did collect them in 2024. I think that, you know, perhaps the previous board could have been more explicit in our direction, but my understanding, and perhaps the previous board members who on this board can, say what they thought, was that we were doing this based on campsite. And the way I think about it is, why the heck did we go through all of that pain and suffering to define what a campsite is? And then get this ballot language passed and ultimately have the voters, the electors, pass the ballot. What if we were gonna think differently about how to collect the tax? That would have been the time to bring it up when we were talking about the ballot language. I also want to acknowledge that the difference between, we saw Director Eyestone's chart when we looked at this. And I don't recall anybody on the board at the time saying we would like to collect this based on the higher number in the chart. I do think that we need to consider that there is value to partnerships beyond collected tax revenue. And I would like to say that I think Planet Bluegrass is a great partner with the town of Lyons. And I think we've all shown good faith through the years in working together, no matter how painful it has been. And, strong relationships are often made from great pain, as I think we all know. So for those reasons, I think that we should stick with the way it has been collected based on campsites. I really feel for the Planet and any other business like it, if boards can change from every 2 years and potentially make changes to the way that these tax laws are interpreted. I think that's a rough position to be in. So those are my thoughts, and curious to know others. So Trustee Hammer, if you wanna go next?
Sure, this is all new to me, so I haven't had the pleasure of dealing with this. After listening to the discussion from everybody so far, cause I was trying to rack my brain going, how is a campsite equates to a hotel room. Okay, so then you get into what's a campsite, how many people, but after Trustee Browning talked about the percentage of consideration paid, it just seems like that would make things so much simpler to do that now. So I would be in favor of going in that direction. Now, understanding Planet's already probably booked campsites for, this needs a long runway, 1 or 2 years out to transition, but it just seems like long-term, that would just be a simpler, because we may run into other situations like that. And I did listen to the audio from the last board, and I heard Kenyon Waugh talk about it, and he said the town's not even charging on their own campsites. Maybe they are now.
We raised our rates.
Okay, so anyway, so I think fair is fair. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it just seemed like this will continue to be an issue unless we really simplify it. And I think based on the monies received, the percentage of that. So it just seems like a long-term, simpler approach. So.
What kind of runway are you thinking?
Well, I would look to Planet and say, I don't know how far out they book, if 2025 is probably already booked, so nothing would, be done until 2026.
Trustee Dottie?
I really appreciate you refreshing my memory from that discussion, because honestly, I didn't remember it very well, but I do remember the discussion around the hotel for sure. And I also, hear the frustration from longtime business here in Lyons who we've, had good partnership through, ups and downs. I mean, I would love to find a solution that works for all here. And I can't decide right now.
Trustee Hammer?
One thing I failed to mention, because I looked at Director Eyestone's revenue analysis, and I looked at, you got a Venture Lodge, Airbnbs, bed and breakfast, and Planet Bluegrass pays just a little bit more than the bed and breakfast category, and I'm going, I don't even know where a bed and breakfast is in our town, probably. But the point is, I don't see that there's equity in what the fees being charged for the, lodging tax. If I just kind of, I'm not looking at the number of nights but Wicasa pays a ton of taxes, compared to, so anyway, I just look at this and this really jumped out at me as inequitable without doing all the math behind number of lodging nights and all that, so.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Zach, can you give me some insight into the accounting of either admission to the festivals and camping, or are they all sold as a packet? In other words, if I go and buy a $300 ticket to the festival and I want to camp, there's a separate charge, right? What I'm trying to drive at is how easy the accounting is for you if a 5% were applied to only the camping section.
It's a mix, so there's a handful of tickets that are camping only, and there's a handful that are packaged, but we already have to make that separation when we submit our accounting for how we calculate it right now. So from an administrative difficulty, there's no difference there.
So now when you account, you have to do some grammar school math when you have 25 people who are applying for camping. You have to figure out, well, that's 5 campsites, right? That's the way that works now.
That's correct, how we're currently doing it.
Would it make it easier for you if there were straight percentage rather than doing that other step of the math?
Not materially enough to make me want to select that method of calculation. We've got a spreadsheet that we just plug our numbers into every year, and that's also what we submit.
So the point is, there is no real difficulty in separating out the lodging, AKA camping part from the festival admission part.
Correct.
Even with the school, the song school, is that easily parsed out, camping from song school?
Yeah, we apply kind of a similar number of nights expense as we have for the festival to get that portion for the schools, so it's not rated.
Okay, all right, thank you for that insight. So based on that, I would suggest a flat 5% rather than doing campsite machinations. But I agree with Trustee Hamrick that there should be some sort of a runway for this. I think 2026 might be appropriate for its institutionalized, in fact.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I had a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about this back at the time we did it, and I was the one who wanted to see us go to 5% and was also pushing for us to be able to go up to 8% without going back to the voters. But in looking, I am not sure. Where I am in this as I'm listening to everybody now. I thought I knew before the meeting tonight. I think probably the straight up in 2026.
Trustee Dahman?
So I agree with the 2026. And I think it's probably better per campsite rather than per ticket holder.
So that's a little bit confusing to me.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. So
the way it's being done now is per campsite. So that wouldn't need a runway because that's the way it's being done now.
okay. Because wouldn't it be more confusing to have it per ticket holder, or is it more confusing per campsite?
They track it both ways. They know how many camp tickets they've sold. They know how many, and then they have a methodology they can do it either way.
Okay, then I guess I'm not sure what I would saying that.
Okay, well, you and trustee Dottie are both not sure, so.
I know I regret I didn't listen to the audio. I wish I had gone back and listened to the audio.
Oh, it's, yeah,
And
you would,
I could go along with trustee Henrik's suggestion, because I think this is more of a long-term issue, and I think the difference in it's about $10,000 a year. It's not chicken feed, but it's not make or break on the budget either.
It's 5X.
If resolving this can be done by going with the extra year to 2026, I'd be okay with that as a way to, as trustee Rogan said, we spent so much time on this, if that would resolve it. I mean, touch this part again, I would go along with that.
Trustee Miller?
Can I ask Zach, so I mean, if we changed it to the 5%, I assume you would just add 5% on ticket sales for the camp and just pass that on?
So our challenge is that we don't charge additional fees. That's a big kind of important thing for Plant Bluegrass. So and there's some negatives to that, of course, but the positive is that you're not stuck with, here's $25 of fees once you're checking out. And so, yes, there would probably need to be a ticket increase to account for this. However, it's not as simple as just saying, here, everybody, it's the town of lodging tax. It looks like we're just charging more, and in a world where we're charging more for everything because everything's gotten more expensive, I'm trying to balance not having to be doing that on every single angle because we get hit so often. So that's kind of it's our unique piece again.
I hear you, but everything you buy, there's a little tax and you put the blame on the town and versus, everybody expects that, at least I do.
Yeah, and that's been a part of our brand for 30 years.
Just to have the one.
We're all in, yeah.
Okay.
And that is actually not our concern.
I understand,
I mean, from my perspective, that if they choose to continue to do that, they can choose to continue to do that. That is not, the way the market has handled this in virtually all other lodging circumstances in the US.
Yeah.
So that's their choice. If they want to continue that brand, they can continue that. But I would question, is this a good time then for them to change and say, yeah, this is a pass-through?
Yeah.
Because I think it's appropriate for it to be a pass-through.
but there's also the legal, Director Eystone is saying that we need to detail out sales tax and lodging tax to be able to report that to the state, so there should be a way,
I think it's actually required by the Department of Revenue that when you make a purchase and there is a tax charged or attached to it, like sales tax, that you have to detail that out on a receipt. The reason I know this is because we had a situation where a business was not attaching the sales tax on the receipt on a liquor purchase. And I went back and asked them, and they did state that they are required to detail if it is something that like sales tax or lodging tax in this case is attached to, they're required to detail that out on a receipt. They can't roll it up and just say this is your flat fee or your flat purchase. I can definitely double check that, but it was also a discussion I had with them fairly recently on another business.
Thank you, Director Eystone.
That's certainly true for sales tax, and that's common in a lot of states. It's been a long time in that area, but lodging tax is local. I mean, the Department of Revenue is not involved in the collection of our lodging tax. That's totally done locally. The town administrator is the designated, and we could require that on the local level, just like the Department of Revenue does for sales tax. We haven't chosen to do that, though. Basically left it optional with the business as to lodging tax, and so I'm not sure. Maybe they do care. I'm not sure the Department of Revenue cares what we do on our local lodging tax.
You're
You're
probably
nodding there. Is that the case, Attorney Dittman?
Yeah, they certainly don't. And there's been, I think, pressure to get them more involved in some of this stuff, and they've resisted that. And so,
but for us to reconcile it, we should.
That may be something we want to adopt, if it's not required right now.
Sales tax.
We could do the same thing that Department of Revenue does on the state level, and say if you charge a lodging tax in lines, you have to itemize it out.
Okay, that's
We
a
just-
separate issue.
We just haven't
Let's-
done that.
let's
Yeah,
leave
I
that
don't think somebody-
Yeah. So.
Okay, so here's where I'm at. I regret that I didn't go back and listen to that board meeting. That's my fault. But I do trust your memory and how you remember that conversation going. So if you feel that is, we were deciding on, we were discussing the hotel, and this is per campsite for Planet Progress, and I'm going to go with them.
Trustee John?
I think I agree as well. With your, what you said.
Okay, well, so where we land on this then is a 4-3 decision to change the way that the planet calculates and remits its revenue. And it seems like of the 4 folks who would like to see that happen, everybody is okay with waiting until 2026, tax year 2026. I want to say this is disappointing to me. But you know, many things are in this life. I do want to point out that the use of the word resolving the issue, I just want to say that the planet staff and the previous board had an understanding about how the tax was going to be remitted and that nobody was in error. Okay, this board would like to change how that occurs. That's the prerogative of this board, whether I agree with it or not. But I don't think there was really anything to resolve. I think everybody was acting completely above board.
Well, very
And
much
with
like we are now.
integrity. And so I just want to make clear that nobody's impugning anybody's integrity in this matter. Is that clear to staff? Yeah. Everything, okay. All right, thank you again for your patience, Zach.
Yeah.
So then what is the action to do that? We need to draft a.
Well, I thank you for asking the
He had
question.
suggested
A guidance document is what Brandon suggested.
Yeah, we could do a guidance document, or if we feel like some additional revisions to the code to memorialize this or in order, we could also do that. But I mean, I don't think any immediate actions are necessary, as we are allowed to interpret our codes the way we do, so long as they're reasonable. And I think everyone was here and heard how we're going to do it, and we have a pretty good record, I think, of what the understanding is going forward. But just for future boards and commissions and staff, it might be a good idea to either memorialize this in some sort of guidance document or a memo to the file, or change the code to be explicit on the treatment of camping.
Well, and so I think that in order to minimize how often this might get changed on people who operate campsites, not just the planet, but Mr. Tamburello, Think Generator, Casa, if they start offering camping. I'm wondering if we should consider an ordinance to memorialize how we treat tax collection when it comes to camping. I don't know how the rest of the board or staff feels about that, but I just want to put that out there. Because we don't want to be doing this again. We don't want another board to be doing this again.
We could, I was looking, I think, Brandon, isn't there something in the law, don't we have a provision in the lodging tax section? Part of the code that says, gives the town administrator the authority to issue interpretive rulings and that kind of, I think.
Yep.
Been a while since I read it, but I think so.
Yeah, which can be changed, right?
No, but the language in this, yeah,
So, in that, just memorializing what the board has decided.
in the minutes.
Or just putting out a interpretation, this is the interpretation of camping taxes, we're gonna expect it to be paid, 1, 2, 3.
I think at the very least, there should be a memo going out to the planet that describes this decision and the reasons why.
I would, if your goal is really not to have it change every 2 years, I think
Yeah.
an ordinance is
Yeah.
preferred,
I think
because
that-
administrator can change too, and their interpretation could change, and then they're facing.
So we'll talk about putting together an ordinance, but in the meantime, if the board agrees, I'd like to direct the administrator to send a memo to Planet Bluegrass.
Agreed.
Okay. Right. If there's nothing else on that issue, well, thank you for attending. Let's move on to the next general business item, which is discussion direction to staff on ADU code revisions. So we had a workshop earlier this evening. And we talked about what we are required to do legally based on the new legislation and what we still have some control over as a board. So I have a list here and I'm just gonna read through it and we can talk about how we want to direct staff. So the first item in the list is the entrance location. Do we as a board want to take another look at where the entrance location should be and give ADU builders a little bit more latitude regarding where it is?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Do we want to set a limitation on size of ADUs? Trustee Henrik, PCDC former chair?
Not really. And where my mind is for a lot of these is if we can get rid of more restrictions and let people get creative and then maybe put some guardrails in and have it be more of a staff waiver type thing or something. I just think the more we have in there, the more things, I mean, could I recall the entrance, there was a ADU up there on Third Street and the guy's on the corner and anyway, so you just have to do crazy things to make it happen and people actually walk from some of those because of the rules and we're doing a disservice. So I'd like to loosen those restrictions and make it more of a waiver process if we keep anything in place.
Point of order, a question about your question. There's actually like two aspects of this that we talked in the workshop. One is we could allow ADUs of any size, but a related question is, should we keep our waiver of tap fees for a certain size? So there's really kind of like.
Yeah, that's,
Those are incentives or something.
yeah, so that's, so, right, those are, the questions are absolutely related.
Yeah.
I think the thought, when it comes to size, I think the thought is you want to have one residence that's primary and one residence that's clearly not primary, that's secondary. And so and this is, I'm not sure where I fall on this, honestly. If we don't set a size limitation and somebody can have a 1,500 square foot primary residence and a 2,000 square foot ADU, then essentially what we've just done is upzoned.
No, agree. I think though, there's so many different potential variations that I live on 5 acres. You can have another ADU, you can't see that. I mean, so you're not gonna see the delta there between the two. So that's all I'm saying is if we just suggest, kind of have guidelines on sizes, but then there's always a waiver process instead of just rejecting it. That's all I'm asking.
Oh, so
So we
there
could
would be
put-
an administrative review process. So here's the guidelines, but if you want to build in a 650 square foot ADU
Yeah,
versus 600, you can go to the town administrator.
Or if you want the entrance to be on the front instead of the back alley. I mean, because corner lots, there's so many different weird scenarios here in town, and so I just want to try to remove anything that would keep somebody from building an ADU. And I don't think we can encapsulate everything in the municipal code, so by just at least having an out with the waiver.
So that brings up an interesting question. Attorney Dittman.
Yeah.
Is there a way to, this list of policies that we can enact or not enact? Is there a way to just sort of refer them all to staff for administrative review?
I mean, that's what we're required to do, or everything's going to be administrative review, right? We're not allowed to do TCDC reviews anymore.
Right, but when we talk about things like can an ADU be larger than the primary residence?
Yeah.
Right now, it's codified that it cannot, and that's not addressed by the legislation.
Right. So you could refer it to staff to make a decision on that and not set, necessarily, square footage restrictions on that, but there has to be some criteria. It can't just be as staff feels like, because then you're in arbitrary and capricious land, right? Where one person gets yes, one person gets no, and no one knows why because there was no criteria which says why someone gets approved or denied. So there has to be some guardrails.
What about, percentage of total lot size?
Certainly you could do that, or a percentage of, the primary dwelling unit. I mean, you can do all sorts of different ways, I think, to handle this.
Yeah, because right now it's max at 800 square feet, but some primaries could be 600,
That's the problem.
Yeah, so, and maybe you want to make an 800 square foot.
That's what those guys want to do.
Okay, let's go to another easy one then. Do we want to change our short-term rental policy? Right now, sure, ADUs cannot be used as short-term rentals.
Absolutely not. That is the key to the short-term vacation rental ordinance that we spent a lot of time on. And PCDC, the Citizens Board. And because we have that, along with the principal residence requirement for short-term vacation rentals, the town of Lyons has not seen the problems with short-term vacation rentals that are plaguing all kinds of front range and mountain communities. I have no idea why it would be recommended to change that. It worked very well. We don't have the problem with absentee owners running short-term vacation rentals in Lyons. So why should we change that?
And I think we do allow it for a few days a year, so if it's just like during the festival, don't we allow so many days per year, like up to 9 or something?
I don't think
I
so.
thought we did,
Attorney
maybe we
Diven?
just discussed it.
Attorney Diven?
I just want to be clear, we weren't recommending a change to the STR ordinance, is saying that's one of the things that the statute specifically calls out you can change if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, but
yep, understood.
I guess I
I
counter,
agree with you.
to counter what trustee Browning's saying, no. And I've seen this in town where short-term rentals can generate 4 to 5x cash flow. So if you look at it and go, oh, can I afford to build an ADU based on $800, $1,000 rent? Probably not. The numbers aren't gonna compete. Can I do an STR? Probably so. Well, but it's not getting us a housing, but then it could happen, and maybe I'm just, speculating too much, but people get tired of dealing with short-term rentals and the headaches. And then they maybe would convert, build the thing, and then, because I think financing is the biggest issue, bar none. So anyway, we can get more housing stock, maybe some of that would drift over to non-short-term rentals.
Richard, what do you think?
I'm with trustee Browning.
Me too, strongly.
Well, if ADU is to be a facet of affordable housing, then short-term rental doesn't do any
Right.
affordable housing
Right.
argument.
Exactly.
And
I don't disagree with it.
I could not agree with you all more violently.
Mhm.
Yeah. So no change to the STR policy. And I think trustee Browning's right. So many other communities see so much loss of housing.
Yeah.
Because of this, and we have enough of a challenge.
For sure. We've spent so much time talking about affordable housing and attainable housing, and we would just be stabbing ourselves in the foot if we were to say, oh, sure, we can make EDUs, short-term rentals. I mean, we would have a problem on our hands immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Okay.
And then we just undo everything we've been striving towards.
But how many ADUs have we put in the last decade?
10 to 12.
Officially 10 to 12, but I can tell you.
But there are about 75 in town.
Understand that, but 10 to 12, okay,
Yes.
so one a year.
I would like to suggest, to me,
So
this
we're
isn't easy before you get to the others. I'd like to suggest some form of a formal registration process. So we know where they are. I know we ordered an amnesty period for those that were not in compliance. That was a flop. I think one person came forward. But for me, that's a big safety issue, and to know our census, our population, our housing stock, I had to literally, we sat, free staff for 8 hours. That's a lot of staff time to count how many ADUs we think we have.
Yeah, I agree. It's past time.
And I know what we call it, but just even,
That's something new, but it wasn't in the materials. I don't think that's really noticed tonight, but I'm
It was
strongly
just
opposed to
ADU.
that.
Oh, you're
Well,
opposed to
let's-
that?
Strongly opposed.
Okay.
I think it's, so you're right, it wasn't noticed for tonight, so maybe on a future agenda there.
ADU discussion.
Well, it wasn't in the packet, there was nothing about a registration program, so I can see the point that it's not, I don't think it's worth having an in-depth discussion tonight, however, I do wanna discuss it as a board. And it's not part of the new legislation, it's not part of the, how do we build more ADU discussion?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought it was just a direction of how we wanted to update the code.
We're gonna get into that, and I wanna go dig up all the 2 years we spent discussing that on the DCDC and decided not to do it, because there were arguments for and against it, and went through a law.
We just have lots of lessons learned since this was adopted.
Yeah. Trustee Hammer?
I just want to remake the point, and I agree with everybody on STRs, but if we look at, we have a housing stock of 800+ homes, and we had on average 1 ADU a year. That's not really successful in my opinion.
But we were averaging 0 per year till we changed the policy.
Fine, but I'm just saying, we need to do something different. We need to, really rethink what
We're gonna
we have to do.
waive the sprinkler requirement, that would do it.
Okay, all right, let's reel it back in here.
So anyway, I just want to make this.
Trustee Jackson?
Well, and I wanted to say this earlier, actually, I do agree that we need to make it easier for people. I would like to figure out a way to incentivize and encourage and educate. I really want to look at this like holistically, and I love that we're talking about, the size and the number and the setbacks, and the design and the location, et cetera. I think we do have to look at it fully because I do think we need to make it easier on people. And I am concerned about our sprinkler system, that we adopted. I want to make it easier for people to build ADUs. This will help our.
And I think if we can, and I think that whoever said it before is right, we're probably 3/4 of the way there of being an ADU supported community.
Right.
And so I would encourage us to get involved in the rulemaking when they start making the rules.
Yeah.
So anybody who wants to go down to the Capitol with me,
I'll
again,
go.
is more than welcome. In terms of what we need, how we want to direct staff to bring back potential code changes or more information tonight, though. So what I would like to get more information about is what are the possibilities on setting size limitations in the context of relating to the total size of a lot, a percentage of the total lot size. For example, if somebody wants to have 2 ADUs that are each 600 square feet, or 1 ADU that's 1,200 square feet and their main house is 2,000 square feet, like what do we want? Anybody?
Can we start, I want to limit it to.
Let me talk about, to me, I'm less concerned about the size of ADUs than I am preserving. We have told the board about preserving the policy of not of waiving tap fees for ADUs, small ADUs, which is now defined 800 square feet. I really think that's an important policy.
Well, we're like,
And so that relates to, that's one size issue, but then how big can an ADU be if somebody says, I'll pay the tap fees, I'm gonna build a 1,400 square foot ADU. I don't think you'll see any of those.
I think, when it comes to tap fees, I want to make sure that I understand this correctly. Because based on what I think Director Kaplan said was, it's not really that we're waiving the tap fees, it's that the ADU is tapping into the existing service. And so I think the question is more, do we want to make people buy another tap and put a whole other tap in that's separate from the main residence for the ADU? Did I get that right?
Right, or charging some form of fee. I wouldn't call it a tap fee. I would call it a large ADU extra fee.
Like a connection fee.
An impact.
Not even for the utility.
Attorney Dittman?
Oh, just two things. I think one, the legislation did preserve the ability to charge impact fees. And so I think you could bundle that into an impact fee because you're not physically making another tap. I mean, that's not happening. But you're right, there is potentially a strain on the system. What is that? That's for the board to determine, which is why theoretically you would charge something additional. But I want to go back, to I think Trustee Rogan's original question was, alternative ways of calculating this. And I think, maybe before you even go there, you need to determine what the numbers look like. Is that based on lot size too? Because if you're doing, like, as you mentioned, you have a 1,500 square foot house, let's say you're allowed to build ADUs up to the amount of square footage of the existing primary residence. You could do three, 500 square foot ADUs. Do you want to allow for that? And so I think the question on numbers is also almost more relevant to start with and then go from there.
So how many ADUs per lot are we gonna allow? Is the question.
But I think you're right to bring up the question about the lot size and the proportion to the lot. So that's what you were trying to get to, is the percentage.
Well, Trustee Hamrick's got 5 acres, she could put up a village.
Yeah, why aren't you putting up a
Well,
village?
this is why we're having this conversation,
No,
because
so.
essentially we're, if we allow 2 or 3 ADUs in an R1 zoning district, then it's essentially R3.
Well, it definitely is, plus where do you park that?
That's a whole other ball of wax.
And parking is complicated under this legislation.
I'm in favor of 1 ADU per lot, except for very large lots, and we have to look at the sizes. We had an issue about double lots, 12,000 square feet or something. But a normal lot size is 7,000 square feet or 7,500 or less. I think there should be a limit of 1 ADU per lot.
I would, thank you for saying that. I agree, 1 ADU per lot unless the lot is over a quarter of an acre.
Is that roughly 7,000?
No, I would say an acre.
Really?
Yeah.
I think more
Yeah, I
like.
mean, a quarter of an acre, or even a 3 dwellings. That's not.
Impervious coverage.
It's small.
Yeah.
All right, okay, fine.
My property is an acre. That
I
also.
know, I used to live at a quarter acre. I'm aware of what it looks like.
That also brings up the issue of setbacks. I mean, the relative size of the ADU to the lot. And multiple ADUs on a lot, you certainly can't, obey the current regs on setbacks.
Well, I think,
I mean, if there's a suggestion that we could soften our setback requirements for ADUs, I would not be in favor of that. I mean, what is it, 10 feet now? Is that what
It's
it is?
only, it's 15 feet for side setbacks, with a combination of both sides.
Yeah,
But once you get more people, closer space, more fires can move and
I wouldn't be in favor of changing the setbacks.
noise.
no.
And that is gonna naturally limit the number of ADUs that are built. So let's look for other ways to get them.
Check, just so if the detached ADUs are considered accessory buildings and as such are subject to accessory building setbacks. Not the same as the primary building setback.
Yeah.
So in our code, you have to look at the accessory building
An
setback.
accessory building is different than an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
So
The
that-
accessory building
That's what it
is a
says in
shed.
the code, is that these ADUs are considered accessory building or setback
What is the
That's what the
setback for a
code says.
garage, for example?
in an R1,
5 feet.
I think.
But let's get back to the, how many,
There's a lot here.
there's a lot. So this may take another discussion right now.
I think it's just a good discussion.
Yeah, but I wanna get back to the number of ADUs per lot. So I said a quarter acre and that got, battened down pretty good. Is there another suggestion?
1 acre is 43,560 square feet. I looked it up on AI.
That's giant.
So just half an acre is 20 something thousand square feet. I would say at least about an acre.
So if you have less than half an acre, you can build 1 ADU on your lot. If you have more than a half an acre, how many ADUs?
Build another one.
Then I have 2.
a limit of 2 per lot. Okay.
I just
No matter
don't
how
want to be
big.
in a situation where I had these visions of the old roadside cabins that they used to
Yeah.
have, where you'd have like eight tiny homes,
Yeah,
you know, crammed onto half an acre.
Yeah, that's just part.
so just so I have this correct. If it's less, a half an acre or less, you can have one ADU. If it's more than a half an acre, a
can have
maximum of
2.
2. There's no exceptions for the 5 and 10 acre lots. Planet Bluegrass, 10 acres, 20 acres.
You could put up an unless allowed by the board of trustees, somebody that has a particular
Okay.
situation that nobody can see these and, you know, I've got 10 acres.
Or like, yeah, a 5 acre
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
You could
If they
allow
want
somebody
one on
to-
each acre.
Yeah.
2 unless otherwise permitted by the board of trustees in any particular situation, maybe they would.
I was gonna say, 2 per half acre.
I think there has to be some consideration for the abutters too on all of this. That's my concern.
Yeah.
So that it
Yeah.
doesn't go from an R1 to a,
Yeah.
R3.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what-
Yeah, I still stick with an acre. I say anything less than an acre is just 1, anything over an acre is 2. And accommodation could be made for stuff beyond that. I mean, that's just my own opinion on that.
And I'm good with half acre. Do we want to weigh in on half acre versus
Well-
acre for 2?
Actually, I was just redoing the math for a quarter of an acre. If you said 1 acre is 43,000 square feet, then it's 10,000 square feet for quarter acre.
Right.
So that's above the average lot size in Lyons.
Right.
We started out with 7,000 square feet. And then you said a quarter, which we also, but actually, a quarter is actually larger than 7,000 square feet. So I'm actually okay with the 1 per quarter acre.
Quarter acre, no.
If that's 10,000 square feet, because I'd be okay with it.
Wonder.
I just look at a lot of quarter acre lots.
I was thinking what are the lot sizes in mine? The standard lot size is 75,
Right.
$60. There are, and we talked, there's like a dozen or so double lots in down there, like 12,000 square feet. So when I picked the half acre, I was thinking all of those lots, both the smaller ones and the double lots, 1. But there are a few places in town, not many, that have lots of greater than half an acre or an acre, either one. I'm okay with either one. So you're not gonna be, there's gonna be a very limited number of lots
Can
greater
we,
than half an acre in Lyons.
Maybe the direction to staff is to, take a look at what are the lot sizes
yeah.
generally?
How many lots are?
I would
greater
say
than
there's,
half an acre?
Old Town is 7,500 unless it's a double, and then the subdivisions are mostly quarter acre per lot,
Mhm.
almost all of them.
They're not gonna
Stone
be
Canyon
very
might be a
big lots.
little bigger because the
Just the
houses
corner
are
lots.
bigger.
And there's only a handful.
But it's
that are
a quarter acre is
acre.
the standard lot in our subdivision.
75 by 1.
And I can think of property owners in subdivisions who have added an ADU to the back of their property, whether it's a studio shed or whatever it is. I see that,
Yeah.
the physical presence it takes, it's not huge.
But if
And
they
of course-
do a bigger one.
But if they did it, of course, yeah, this is very small.
Yeah, my lot on Steamboat is 18,000 square feet.
Okay, you're gonna get up in that, you're getting the estate residential kind of
There's
bigger lot.
all of those up there on the mountain.
They have room for 1 for sure.
Okay, so, do we want to make a determination of how many ADUs per lot size now, or do we want to find out more information from staff?
Let's do it now, we can save staff.
Yeah,
Okay,
we don't have a plan there right now, so it's me.
I think, right, thank you for reminding me of that. I think, I'm sticking with the half acre. We've got Mayor Pro Tem with an acre. Trustee Browning?
I'm good with either one. I'll go along with an acre or 2. I don't think there's gonna be but a few lots that are between this two size.
I prefer an acre, but I would be able to go down to an acre.
You're surprising me, Trustee Will.
2 per half acre.
What?
2 per half acre.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I can live with that.
Trustee Hamrick?
Ditto.
Okay, so then, we are at 2 per half acre
With a limit of 2.
with a limit of 2. So 1 per lot unless you have half acre or greater, and then 2,
Unless otherwise permitted by the DOT.
unless otherwise permitted by the board. Okay. So we got that done. Can an ADU be larger than the primary residence?
We'll say no.
Sorry.
Can the ADU be larger than the primary residence?
So is that the case of the family that was here earlier where they want to?
Because the current house
Right.
is only 800.
Right.
And they wanted,
to do 6.
well, I thought the current house was only 600 when I saw it, but,
Yeah.
and that they want to build one at 850 or 850. Yeah, but then tear down the front one and rent that one.
So they want to change where the primary.
So
residence is.
There won't be
temporarily,
another primary because there doesn't have to be a primary anymore. It's just two structures.
but in this situation, because it's helpful to have a concrete situation, it would be a temporary practice that the ADU is larger than the primary.
Except that as the primary, they're gonna live in the back one.
Until they build the front house.
No,
Yeah.
he said then the front would become his office or something. I don't know.
Oh, I.
It doesn't matter though. There's no more primary.
Yeah, that,
There's no more primary.
There really isn't.
Mm-mm.
They've taken that away. There's no more ownership. It's gonna be two rentals.
And there's nothing we can do about it.
So does it matter if one's bigger than the other? Because you don't know in each case if it'll be in front or back. It's all different depending on the lot.
That's discretionary. We're talking about the ordinance. You have to be at your discretion, like, if they have ADU they're building is bigger than the primary.
Well, it depends what you guys say.
Well, in general.
Right now, an ADU cannot be larger than the primary
Right.
residence.
Perfect.
Do you wanna keep that?
Do we want to keep, you do want to keep that?
Yep.
What if the primary residence is 600 square feet?
Right, like the property that just came up for sale.
Yeah.
And that's 600 square feet.
Then that would have to be at the discretion of the administrator, right?
As long as.
So what if we,
there's guidelines.
said an ADU cannot be larger than the primary residence, than the existing residence, unless by waiver of the board?
I don't think you
Can we do that, Brandon?
I don't particularly like it, as it sounds like an appeal, I think maybe a way to kind of split the baby on this one, if you will, would say not larger than the primary residence, unless that primary residence is less than 800 square feet.
Oh, there you go.
You get 800 square feet.
Okay, I'm good with that. Are we good with that?
Okay, let's get it in writing. Did you get it?
That's what I was gonna, 800.
800 square feet.
Okay, so wait a minute, size. Not larger than the primary.
Less than 800 square feet, Brandon?
Yeah, if the primary residence is less than 800 square feet, then you can build an ADU up to 800 square feet.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think that's fair. Okay, thank you.
Just thought of it, so.
Yeah,
800 or
no,
850?
I think that's great.
800, 850.
That's where I would.
I think, I think we've pretty much covered everything else except for design standards. I like our current design standards are pretty relaxed. It generally has to fit within
The neighborhood.
the neighborhood aesthetics. Are we good with that? I haven't seen any
I
egregious.
thought the state law had some language about that in there that we probably need to try in the state. Didn't that 1152 have something about those?
So I said you can impose design standards so long as they're not restrictive from practically or totally restrictive of deploying an ADU. So
So it's like you can't say you have to have diamond encrusted windows.
correct, yeah, or you can't make it so ridiculous that no one can comply with it and have an ADU, but so long as it's things like color, that's what the examples that were given was like color and materials.
Yeah.
You could do that, like matching, for example, like the front residence.
I think what we've got is good. And it hasn't caused any problems. There's never been an issue about that I know of.
People are doing beautiful things.
And Lions is celebrated for its unique character, and I wouldn't want to impede that.
No. One of our former planners used to say funky, but not chunky.
There we go. I like that.
Okay, anything else on ADUs that I missed, Brandon, Victoria?
I'm sorry, I need one more clarification on this
Yeah.
size.
Yeah.
So, not larger than the primary unit unless the primary is less than 800 square feet. But how big can the other one be?
800
I was.
800.
800.
They can both be 800,
Yeah.
One has to be,
Oh, we're saying
one has to
max
be
of
799.
Well, yeah.
for the ADUs.
but 800 is the largest they can do.
So we're saying max of 800
Yeah.
for any?
I don't know.
To
like-
exceed we're trying to deal with the 650-foot house and no one put build 800 square foot ADU.
800 is currently,
800 is the cap.
No, 800 is the max now, so are we saying that's the max for going forward, or we
No,
saying you
that's-
could build a 1200?
I think we have not yet landed on what if you're larger than 800 square feet, right? What can you do then? We
I
haven't,
thought that's what you were asking.
I am.
yeah, I think in that case, the way this would be is that if you're larger than 800 square feet, you can be up to the size of the primary residence, but no more.
If you're larger than, so you could have 3,000 square foot homes.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't make sense either. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like if you have a primary residence that's 650 square feet, and then you're like, you know what, I'm gonna add another 1,000 square feet onto my primary residence. And that way I can build an ADU that's bigger, about 1,200 square
Yeah.
feet, you know what I mean? Like,
Do you
There's
want us
just
like a
some-
maximum cap on that one too? Maybe. I mean, maybe you
Mayor-
cap like 1,200 or something.
Yeah, but what about,
Big
a
lot.
basement ADU?
Well,
People- I mean, I can do a 2,000
Yeah.
square foot ADU in my downstairs.
They don't matter.
That would be a
Current limit on those.
currently, there's no limit.
Exactly.
The size limitation shall not
Yeah.
apply to basement.
It's only detached.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, detached.
that's what I was thinking about, like a percentage of the lot size.
Or percentage of the existing or something, to
Yeah.
keep it in
I think
proportions. You don't have,
I know,
Yeah.
we don't, yeah. Attorney Dittman?
Yeah, Mayor Rogan, I think the problem with the percentage of lot size is that, the trustee Hamrick situation. If you have a 5 acre lot and we say it's a quarter of, your lot, which would make sense for a lot of people, he can build a 1.25 acre ADU. So that's what's difficult about the percentage of lot size. I think it's easier to do a percentage of whatever the existing unit is, but it would work in most cases, but there's gonna be these weird outliers, I think, and if you did lot sizes.
What about, it can't be, and I'm just throwing this number out there, kind of, as an example, but what if an ADU cannot be more than 25% larger than the primary residence?
or 20.
Or 20, or 10, or, whatever we decide, no?
I mean, the problem with that, again, I mean, we have to think through all these things, is if, let's say you have a 4,000 square foot house, right? Well, now you can build a 5,000 square foot house as an ADU and then, rent that out for a lot of money,
Yeah,
which defeats the purpose.
yeah, I see that.
When it's, how do I track any of this if they're not documented? I just don't know how I do any of this code without it knowing who's doing what where.
Well, they would need a building permit for all of
Well,
this.
not everybody has to have one if you have an existing structure in your backyard. I don't know. That's
They
how
would
we
be-
have 75 without any
Or in their
documentation.
basement.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to enforce that going forward, I think, is if you're going to.
I'm just, as the person who has to do this, it is. I think there's a lot of unanswers. Is there anything, could we get started on this and bring it back again for
Yeah.
another discussion or
We're
something?
gonna, I think, yeah, I would be curious to know what other communities are doing, particularly resort communities
We look into
with
that.
using stock.
You mean on registering ADUs?
Well,
Not
I'm
registering,
just
just all of it.
implementing any of
All of
this.
it,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Well,
Right,
talk
hate to
about
say-
parking.
what's that?
There's,
Just
the state
eliminate-
said it's
I thought there's some
eliminated parking, you cannot
limited-
control it.
Well, acceptance with certain.
There are certain limited circumstances where you can, but it gets really complicated, so.
Nothing but what we're talking
We'll
about.
just
Yeah.
remove the parking restriction.
yeah. And
So
the
that's
party
gonna
really
be-
needs to track the state statute, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, what I would do is just copy and paste the state statute because it's complicated.
well, okay. So let's continue this discussion.
I just make one more comment too.
Well, sprinklers.
Whether, I think that we still very important for affordable housing purposes in lines that we incentivize the building of small ADUs.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's an impact fee for larger ones or whether, because that's exactly why the 800 square foot limit is in there now. Yeah. To incentivize the building of small.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's very, very important.
Agree with you.
It's not gonna do us any good housing to have 1,500 square foot ADUs that rent for $20,000.
No.
$3,000 a month. That's not what we're trying to do.
I think one of the things we're gonna have to look at some point in the future and probably just ought to start thinking about is waiving sprinkler with a different kind of accommodation that would get us close to them. Number of points of egress. Something like that. I think we're gonna have to look at that.
What about waiving for less than 800 square feet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, we do have some that are charging over 2,500 a month right now.
Waiting for small ones,
Yeah.
because it's easy to get out of.
Smaller, yeah. Yeah, I think that's something worth.
They defeated the purpose of it.
What's the size of the two-bedroom at Summit? I've been trying to remember the size of the two-bedroom.
Oh, it's like 1,400.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess 12 to 14.
12,
I thought it was smaller than that. And the one bedrooms on Evans?
600 square feet.
They're tiny. All right, okay.
So should we start working on it? The attorney and I doing some research,
Yeah,
listening to others and bringing this back?
yep. I mean, this is not, well, I would love to, we need to get this done, but there's no hard deadline.
Okay.
Well, we have
From the
until
state.
end of June.
In a June.
before you select, Right.
Mm-hmm. So there might be more rulemaking, like, who knows, but it's good to know kind of where we stand now. Okay, so I see next up we have discussion direction on the Tebow draft annexation agreement and then on the Apple Valley property and access easement. I'd like to propose that we move number 4 under general business to after the executive session on the same topic. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so discussion direction to staff on Tebow draft annexation agreement, I think is, proceed as we discussed in the executive session. Okay. So then we will move on to trustee reports, excuse me, and then the second executive session. Trustee Delman, would you like to kick us off?
Well, I have nothing to report. The PRC meeting is a week from today.
You'll be talking about ping pong tables.
Ping pong tables and the
Trail thing.
trail from Wheeler Rocky Flats.
Great, so hopefully we'll get that document. from-
And the park, including Confluence Circle.
Right, interest, yeah, Dave already has that on the agenda.
Okay, great. Ping pong table and confluence circle. Thank you.
It's a big agenda.
Trustee Brady?
EDC hasn't met since our last meeting, the UED has. And the 2 items I would highlight from that, number 1, I think it's been finalized, but they're anticipating effective April, I believe, a 9% electric rate increase from mean to the town of our wholesale electric rates.
Wow.
Which, if that holds true, I don't know if it's changed since the UED meeting, will probably require us to take a look, because that would be a heck of a lot for the electric fund to eat, so.
What, why?
It was close to last year too, was 7%, and that was $30,000 on our however
For the
many
year.
$100,000, so we can look at what the percentage becomes to the whole fund, but 30,000 is $30 per thousand per account in 1 year. If it's 40,000 now, you're looking at $40 per account. Or also, this is from April to the following April, so it's only 3/4 of the year, which helps reduce the burden a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
And secondly, the UAB dived into the details to a great degree about what's needed at the wastewater treatment facility. That's an ongoing discussion, but they've made some progress in that and they're gonna continue to focus on that and bring the board recommendation.
Okay. Within the next couple of months, you think?
Chairman Kerr's gone for a month, but yeah, probably the next 2 to 3 months.
Trustee Williams?
Yeah, HPC, wants the board to be aware of the accomplishments of the last year, that continue to work with Pinion on historic context surveying. We got a $25,000 history Colorado grant for that, should be done in spring of 25. We're able to get the historic designation of the depot and working now on the town hall. I designed and ordered 2 bronze plaques for both of those. I got a grant from the LCF, 25,000 for a community event, that for the unveiling of the Ute Trail marker and also for the Native American exhibit at the museum. To have community events related to both of those, that's 25 grand from the LCF. Beginning first certified local government evaluation, which allows us we qualify for History Colorado grants for the next 4 years. That's a once every 4 year process. And applying to History Colorado for a grant to advertise the Historic Preservation Committee program to the town. Must be done busy, plus 4 additional members of the committee, so it's functioning far better than it was a year ago.
That's an amazing amount of work.
I know, it's good stuff.
That's great. Thank you. Trustee Lowe?
The annual town report, this is becoming like rolling out of bed for most people. We've already got 8 of the expected 30 inputs in already. They're done, they're finished. I put a notional January 24th deadline for completion of this. Kim has come up with a great concept for an online annual report rather than just regurgitating the pages as we have in the past 4 years. It might be a bridge too far. I'm gonna discuss it with her, but maybe we can take some baby steps towards making it a little prettier online. The movie task force meets next, on January 14th next week. Ecology board meets on January 15th. I'm just gonna make a comment here regarding the wastewater treatment plant. I don't know what was going on over the holidays, but I have never seen it smell so foul in the morning. I don't know whether it was because there was nobody there because of the vacation schedules, or and frankly, it's the inversion we get in the winter time. But man, oh man, I had to hold my breath going by there every morning.
Yeah, that was the same thing on, I
The
think,
odor
3 or
control
4 of my
system
runs.
is not functioning.
No.
We checked
Does it seem
into
better
that.
now?
was really
Can't
bad.
tell.
It
It was bad a couple days ago, Glenn.
Maybe, but I mean, your point was that it's sort of jerry rigged and they're doing
Right.
it manually, right? So my thought was when I went by, well, gee, maybe the guys are on vacation schedule and they're not paying attention or whatnot, I don't know. Anyways, that would be my first priority for that plan. I'm done.
Thank you.
The Housing and Human Services Commission met right before our workshop. I was only able to attend the first hour. So basically I got a preview of the Safe Streets for All action plan that we will get to preview at the next meeting. It sounds like they will be, or maybe we will be drafting a resolution to adopt safer streets and lions that hopefully will pass in March. So it was just good to get a preview. It was good to have confirmation of, things we're hearing and seeing as well at the Board of Trustees. There were no big surprises except that federal funding is available for these projects. I was like, oh, wow. That's really exciting because I think our job is going to prioritize the project applications that need safety needs and solutions. So I think that's going to be our job. But it was good to have that preview. It was good to know that there was federal funding available for this. And I think it'll be a really interesting conversation to decide where do we need to prioritize our safety concerns. If we have to pick the top 5, I think they've got 10 outlined at least along highway.
It is on our next.
36
Yeah, we'll
workshop.
talk about
So
it.
anyway, yeah, so I'm not gonna say any more. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but I look forward to having that discussion. Yeah, and the LHC meets next Tuesday at 4:30. Great. That's it. Thank you. You're welcome.
Trustee Hammer.
The SFC hadn't met since our last meeting, but we're slated to meet Thursday, so.
Okay, we all have busy weeks. The PCDC hasn't met. I haven't seen an agenda for next week. I don't think the PCDC's meeting.
I was gonna talk with you about
We'll
it.
talk about it. Administrator Simonson is now the staff liaison for PCDC. Well, we're looking for a new planner. So other than that, I spoke to a representative from the Cheyenne Arapaho Nation, who is the person who's in charge of youth and cultural programming for them. And he does a youth program each year that's Native youth and non-Native youth, and they do like a 2 or 3 day camping trip. And he mentioned that he has not been able to find any place in Boulder County where they can camp.
What?
And so, I just wanted the board to consider the possibility of allowing them to camp for free in Laverne Johnson Park for their 2 or 3 day youth retreat in the summertime. I don't know the exact dates yet.
Wasn't that their ancestral land to begin with? Yeah, that sounds totally appropriate.
Other than all the weekends are booked, but if it can be during the week, I mean, we'll have to work with them. So
Yeah.
if you can get a contact to Lisa and Kim.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if the board had an interest in pursuing it before we went any further. Okay, great. The other thing I want to say is that I, Brandon had sent us the ADU, confidential doc that was the explanation of the legislation. I should not have, but I forwarded it to the PCDC chair. It was, for board use only, so I just wanted to, I regret doing that. I just had a momentary brain blip of thinking, oh, PCDC chair should probably see this. So, just wanted to make the board aware that I did that, and I will be more careful in the future. And that's it.
Thank you for reminding us of your humanity.
Yeah.
We all make those mistakes. We all have those lapses.
Yeah, so,
I don't think that weighs a privilege, but a comment.
you don't think that way is a privilege? Well, thank you for that, Mark. So should we go into executive session before we do a summary of action items? Do the summary first. Okay, let's get a summary of action items, please.
Okay, item 1, I have staff is to research with the post office and address looking at ADU addressing issues. Number 2, there should be a TiVo executive session at the January 21st, 2025 meeting. Number 3, PRC to look at ping pong tables in the parks and the Greenway Trail recommendation. Number 4, staff is to write a letter of support for LEAF for the Boulder County funding. Item 5 is move forward with the vehicle purchase. Item 6, you would like to see more education on parking fees, perhaps notes on the windshield. Item 7 is staff is to send the source of property audit to the Board of Trustees. Item 8, the Wildcat Tavern liquor license was approved. Item 9, ordinance 1179 passed on second reading. Item 10, the board would like to have the commissions review the tree ordinance to come up with different recommendations. Item 11, ordinance to update lodging tax and camping definition brought to a future agenda meeting. Number 12, the board would like the letter to the planet memorializing the lodging tax interpretation. Discussion on ADUs and that there was so many, so I'm not sure if I caught them all. There was no change to the STR
I
policy.
took good notes, Dolores. I don't think you need to go through them all.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, because there was a ton.
Yeah, I got them all.
Basically, we're gonna amend it.
Yes, staff recommendation basically is to look at other communities, what they're doing with ADU changes and bring back the BOT recommendations that were made to a later agenda. And then the last thing I have is work on a 2 to 3 day camping trip with the Cheyenne Arapaho Nation.
Cheyenne or Ute?
Oh, I'm sorry, sorry.
Cheyenne or Ute?
Cheyenne Arapaho.
That's
I think that covers everything, other than some internal stuff I need to do.
Brandon?
I don't have anything. I got good notes on the ADU changes, so.
Do we want to note that the Wildcat liquor license is effective upon issuance of a CF? I just want to make sure that's captured in the minutes.
Oh, it's in the minutes.
Conditionally on COI.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. All right, that brings us to, is there a motion to go into executive session?
Executive, I move go into executive session pursuant to CA section 24-6-424A, 24-6-424B, and 24-6-424E for the purpose of discussions concerning the sale of real property, determining possession of matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators, and the legal advice for attorneys representing the town regarding the sale of town-owned property located at 2186 Apple Avenue.
Thank you very much. That's for dramatic reading at some point. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks. Any discussion? Call for vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Okay, Brandon, I'll start the other link again.
Is it the same one?
Yep.